And hopefully this time it has worked. A couple of minutes late, but you know how these things are. Live streaming is such a nightmare. But with only a few minutes out and a second take of this, welcome to my A Film a Day live, the second live stream done for the channel. And welcome to day 78 of A Film a Day, covering the culmination, I struggled when I wrote the description to describe whatever this is, the director's vision, the final ultimate story that is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Man, we have been on a journey with this. So I remember back in 2014, I'm going to say, it could be 13, that I remember Man of Steel coming out, and there was no indication that this was going to be the starting point for a cinematic universe, except for the usual rumblings. Anytime there's a film that could be part of a franchise, they go, oh, well, is this the first one in the cinematic universe? I remember them doing the same with the Dark Knight trilogy and saying, oh, will the Dark Knight trilogy bleed into a more extended DCEU universe? That never came to pass, or at least it did in a spiritual sense. But Man of Steel is really the first point at which we had the official DC extended comic book movie universe. And unfortunately, compared to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it has been one rocky road. Because, you know, whereas, don't get me wrong, Marvel have had their troubles in their films. That was the demonstration of everything falling into place and working out. Whereas the DCEU seems to be a story of everything of Murphy's Law, really. You know, anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it has gone wrong for them. And so to get to this point where we are finally seeing not just a Justice League film, which we had already seen in 2017, but a ultimate completion of Zack Snyder's vision of the Justice League. This feels monumental, even though, unfortunately, because of present circumstances and the global pandemic, this unfortunately couldn't be a theatrical experience and was watched on television in the UK, of course, through Now TV, in the US through HBO, and all, you know, globally through other services. But it's one of those situations where it still feels epic, and it still feels like we're seeing a really important part of comic book history presented to us. And it is not a perfect film. It is not it's not one of those situations where all of a sudden everything that has gone wrong before is fixed, and now we will go ahead with a bold new vision. But what it is it's an epic that allows Zack Snyder to, whether this be the ending or a revitalization, it allows him to cap off his original intention. You could say the trilogy that is Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Justice League.
We've had a few comments.
Have we?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. So you can comment, of course, on the live stream, and I'm going to have some comments. You know, I'm going to jump back into the comments with the help of my wonderful fiance Helen, who will throw comments at me at certain points.
We've just got a couple of greetings. We've got hello, my brother, from Saeed Rahman, and the Vishnu piece says hey, and then he said, I wish I could watch it in IMAX.
So firstly, hello, my brother Saeed. Saeed is someone who I have known, God, a couple of years now, and it is a pleasure to have him on watching my live stream. Thank you so much for joining me. And yes, IMAX would have been ideal for this. Although, saying that, we're going to get into some of the more eccentric side of what Zack Snyder was kind of going for with this, and some of his intentions that even I haven't fully come to understand. Because, well, I might as well jump into the big cinema elephant in the room of 4:3 is a very, very odd aspect ratio to release a what would essentially be a theatrical film. 4:3 tradition. I mean, 4:3 was classically like an old cinema, TV. Was it TV? Not even old cinema. So a TV aspect ratio. And of course, we are seeing this on TVs, but we're talking your boxy, square televisions, so it would fit into the screen. Now, not everyone has, a flat widescreen television, but most people have a more advanced television than the classical box ones that were, that we had in the 90s and 80s and 70s and 60s. So it does create this odd framing that if it was released to cinema, and particularly to Max, you would go, why would you release it in this? And I don't know, maybe someone will jump on and explain why Zack Snyder decided this. I've not had much of a chance to look into it, but I've not found any reason, more just other people being dubious for why he would release a 4:3 as opposed to your more traditional cinema aspect ratios. But television, I did watch it, and to be honest, you forget. There are moments when it becomes quite highlighted, but you generally forget because this is so epic and so scaled that even watching it at home on my TV with, there is something about, I've always defended the theatrical experience because the theatrical experience is about holding your attention as an audience and going into a space where this is, with a classic epic. If you go back to the 1950s with the biblical epics and the historical epics, even though they're long films, you would go into a theater to watch them and they would have your attention. Now, the issue here is 4-hour film and you're at home with all the normal distractions that can easily grab one. But there's something to be said about the capacity for, I don't know, Zack Snyder, who knows, he knows how to present something in such an epic way that, yes, it could be quite tiring to watch a 4-hour film, but damn it, you're going to give it a go, even if you end up splitting it into two-hour watches, or some people, I understand, would split it into 4 one-hour episodes, which was the speculation at the time of what he originally wanted to do, although that might be heretical. That might not actually have been what he wanted, and just something that was sort of suggested to him. But frankly, we watched it for 4 hours, and we did not get tired. We did not. We were gripped the whole time, and it was, frankly, such an epic experience to see this as intentioned. This is really what a Justice League film should look like.
Comment.
Ooh, what have we got?
According to Saeed, he said this was his original vision with IMAX in mind.
4:3 with IMAX?
Apparently so.
Good Lord, that would have been interesting. Maybe with IMAX there could have been something there that maybe, I don't know, there's something about the structuring of IMAX with a 4:3 aspect ratio that might have worked, but I don't know. Maybe, hopefully, it'll be re-released to cinemas and we'll actually get to see what that looks like. But my point is, this is an epic. This is like the historical epics, the biblical epics. This is, so I suppose the best way to talk about this is to jump back really and look at Joss Whedon's, what people will now refer to as Joss Whedon's 2017 Justice League. And this is going to be a difficult one to talk about because there is a lot to this. Joss Whedon, I don't want to go into too much partly because I am just someone who watches the internet, who knows things, who reads things, but I have never met Joss Whedon. I've never met anyone who's worked with Joss Whedon. You know, these are accounts of people who have worked with him, and I am not, as a guy who sits in a chair on the internet, I'm not in a place to talk about what he is or is not and the environments he creates on sets. There are much more important people whose jobs there are to highlight the potential toxic work environment that has been reported. Saying that, my one thing I will say is that if Joss Whedon, if the reports are true and the accounts of the actresses and the accounts of Ray Fisher are true about the environment that Joss Whedon has created, then I can only be disappointed in him. As someone who proclaimed himself a champion of women, of female-driven storytelling, a champion, someone who was an Imagineer, who brought these fantastical narratives to television and then to film. It's truly disappointing to hear these reports now about him. And I was a huge fan of Joss Whedon. I don't think there's a single piece of his work that I haven't loved. And I am ashamed to hear that this is the kind of person he might be. But that set aside, I'm going to have to talk about this. Like I say, I don't want to talk about it constantly making jabs at him. I'm imagining sort of treating this as Joss Whedon is just the name of the filmmaker, right? And then you have Zack Snyder, who is the other filmmaker. And so with Joss Whedon, it's unfair to attack Joss Whedon's final version of Justice League as a piece of cinema, partly because it is impossible as a filmmaker to come in at the 11th hour and try to complete someone else's story. Famously, AI is the case where Steven Spielberg came in and tried to finish Kubrick's vision for AI and is constantly criticized for it, in spite of the fact that all he was trying to do was complete his friend's vision.
More comments from Saeed. He said, I wanted to see more, and he just says he loved Firefly.
Firefly was fantastic. Firefly was genuinely fantastic. And again, I wish Firefly had gone on for 6 seasons. And again, I hope that that set was also a much better environment, but we'll never know now, or we'll hear about perhaps. But as I say, Stanley Kubrick's vision. It's unfair to attack Steven Spielberg for Stanley Kubrick's vision, just as it's unfair to attack Joss Whedon for Zack Snyder's for completing Zack Snyder's story. Because originally, the narrative as I heard it was that Zack Snyder had a very tragic thing happen in his life, and it is truly heartbreaking to hear about. The loss of a child should happen to no one, and that is something that's incredibly heartbreaking to hear for this guy. And quite rightly, he then had to leave the project to tend to his family and his own personal well-being. And so Joss Whedon, and so the narrative I heard it was that Joss Whedon came in very much like Spielberg and Kubrick, stepped in because he wanted to complete his friend's vision. Now, since then, I've heard different accounts that actually producers brought Joss Whedon in because they wanted Joss Whedon to essentially Avengers-ify the Justice League film, and further reports that claim that they were planning to fire Zack Snyder. Now, obviously this is all hearsay and conjecture, and this is we'll never probably know the truth of it because it's so mired in rumor. But the fact, if you look at the facts as they stand, Zack Snyder would leave if his daughter did pass away very tragically from suicide, and there is no situation where he wouldn't have stepped away. Now, whether Joss Whedon was brought on or whether he stepped in, he was never going to be able to complete Zack Snyder's vision. And so what he tried to do was essentially convert Justice League into an Avengers film. And unfortunately, it's not. It's like people might say, oh, Avengers, Justice League, they're the same thing, aren't they? And they're not really. Avengers, you know, if you look at that original Avengers film, it is a very, even though it had spanned 4 previous films, had set it all up, if you watch it as a film, it's a very contained story. It's got a very basic structure to it, you know, and it was more about, can we execute this incredibly complex venture just to tell a simple story of heroes get together to fight a villain. But Joss Whedon, quite clear, this is a very difficult thing with Joss Whedon, where the impression I've always had of Joss Whedon in his television work is that he loves lore and storytelling and mythology. But what I got the impression with Justice League, and looking back at the Avengers, is actually he doesn't care too much about things he like lore outside of his creation or control. So, you know, he doesn't care that much about comic books, even though he wrote comic books. That's the crazy thing. He did X-Men runs for years. But in terms of the Avengers film, you know, there isn't a great deal of external lore. It is a contained story. And similarly with Justice League, the things he chopped away seem to be the things that would have extended outside of the narrative, you know. So, right, so this is the checkpoint in which I am going to find it very difficult to talk about the Justice League, the Zack Snyder's Justice League and the Joss Whedon's Justice League without going into the differences and, you know, the changes and the things that were taken out and put in and major spoilers. So I'm going to very quickly say my thought on the film as a whole, which is, I loved it. I thought it was great. I think it's phenomenal. I think it is the perfect vision of the Justice League as Zack Snyder originally intended. And it really spans this epic mythological narrative that would have gone on to something, could have gone on to bolster something great, and may still do that. But it is very much in the spirit of things like 300 and Watchmen, that Zack Snyder had this, you know, vision that possibly couldn't be contained, and that, you know, what's in his mind might not have been represented on screen. Hence, he wanted to do it in 2 films and all of this. But because he got complete control and got to tell his story, we got the best creation of what was in Zack Snyder's mind, and that was phenomenal. So if it's that you want the basic version of see it or don't see it, see it. If you were a fan of Zack Snyder's stuff before, if you were a fan of Man of Steel, put a pin in Batman versus Superman. I'll come back to that. But if you like his style generally and you want to see a pure Justice League epic narrative that honors the comic books, honors the style of storytelling, and feels like a Zack Snyder film, then watch it. If you didn't like Zack Snyder stuff before, then you're probably not going to like this, because this is Zack Snyder being full Zack Snyder. This is him, you know, unfiltered, no, you know, limited producer control. This is him getting to tell the story he wants to tell, exactly how he wants to tell it. So if you love it, you go for it. If you don't. With that being said, I'm going to now talk about I'm going to break it down. I'm going to actually analyze this and talk about the differences. And so this is the rest of this is going to be a heavy spoiler section. So you've been warned. Is there any, by the way, just jump on any further comments? No more comments. Cool. Right. So, as I say, Joss Whedon really cut off any aspect of this. He quarterized anything which was greater DC lore, you know, as much as he could. He wanted to tell a self-contained narrative, just like Avengers, where it's heroes get together and they fight a villain. The problem with the DC universe compared to the Marvel one, or at least if you compare the Avengers to the first Avengers film to the Justice League film, is DC storytelling is much more mythological. It's much more like an Odyssey, an Iliad, you know, a Ovid's you know, grand story that ties into things that you know, or hints towards or indicates things that you might not know about, but you'll then want to look more into. And that's really what Zack Snyder's going for. You know, if you look at 300 and Watchmen, you know, Zack Snyder is such a comic book fan. He wants to recreate comic book narratives as close as possible. I mean, 300 almost feels like a motion comic. It's so close. It feels like you're turning the pages as you're watching the film, because he wanted to so closely recreate it. Watchmen, he had a bit more, he sort of stepped away from the comic books a little bit more, but again, in terms of the narrative and the lore, again, he wanted to tell it as comic booky and grand as it was, you know. And he, you know, I've seen him speak about it, and the idea that, you know, he had to battle to keep it more close to the comic book, whereas, you know, producers wanted to change all manner of things and set it in contemporary times and do all kinds of changes that would have taken the soul out from the comic book. And with this, you know, the Justice League film isn't based on any specific comic, but you can feel the DC lore, you know. So if you're still here, this is the final spoiler warning, because, and again, this isn't really a spoiler because it's in the trailer, Darkseid is in this. Darkseid is prominent. Not only is Darkseid in this, but it goes into the anti-life equation. It goes into sort of the dynasty of the new gods, and how that impacts the greater DC universe in a way that you wouldn't expect, because you think, okay, you could easily make a Justice League film where it has Darkseid just pop up and it's, oh yeah, there's the big bad, and Steppenwolf is just the sub boss. But they go, you know, the thing that shocked me is the fact that they then drop the anti-life equation, and they don't really explain. They explain it enough that you won't know, you'll understand basically what it is, but it's some proper lore stuff, and we'll need further films to explain. And I don't know if, and I know Denis Villeneuve is doing the New Gods film, and I have no idea how closely that will tie into this, but that really, that level of drop, and, you know, you have Desard and Granny Goodness who appear, and you really get a sense of, oh, this isn't just a story of them bringing back Superman and them, you know, fighting just an invasion. This is about, you know, a looming threat and a scale and a mythology. And this is like the first step in a greater expanded universe. Again, this really puts the expanded, you know, it references the multiverse and the idea that, you know, this might not be the only version of the characters we get. And again, that's something that they really heavily start to lean into towards the end of the film. So, you know, this is the thing that Zack Snyder really wanted to sort of, this is very much in the spirit of his storytelling. If we're looking at cinema and we're looking at filmmaking, like I say, there are other ways in which it's much more Zack Snyder than Joss Whedon. Obviously, people point out to the fact that Zack Snyder veers much more towards darker palettes, darker colors, whereas Joss Whedon is much more colorful, you know, hence the final fight in Joss Whedon's version takes place in the brightness of day, or not quite day, it's like, you know, lighter colors, and it's whereas Zack Snyder's version is absolute pitch black. You know, almost feel like you miss things because it's so dark. And that's very, you know, that's night and day, literally. And that's very much sort of an indicator of how different Zack Snyder is to Joss Whedon. There are things that Zack Snyder got to do in this film that I don't think, even if he'd been able to finish it, because this is the thing. Zack Snyder's Justice League that we got to see last night is not, I absolutely don't believe it's what we would have seen if Zack Snyder had finished his Justice League film in 2017. I genuinely don't, partly because he's, you know, he's what, 4 years older now, He's a different filmmaker. I genuinely think his personal trauma will change him as a person, and his perspective will have changed. And again, he's been able to see the fan backlash to certain things. He's been able to respond, and he would inevitably shift the narrative to try and address things that people weren't happy with the Joss Whedon version. So he got to troubleshoot. He absolutely would have got to troubleshoot. And consequently, he, this version is, the main thing that I remember watching when in the first half an hour, that absolutely made go, this is much more an unfiltered Zack Snyder as opposed to a studio Zack Snyder is. He loves his slow motion. He loves his almost music video like sequences that really he takes his time with. And I absolutely do not believe that would have been in the film version, the theatrical 2017 version, because again, you just have these moments where you watch them. The first 10 minutes, you don't get dialogue. I think you get one line of dialogue in the first 8 minutes before you hit part 1. And, and the whole parts breakdown of it, where you have part 1, part 2, all the way to part 6 or 7, and then an epilogue. You wouldn't get that in a film version. You might have done, but I think that's much more Zack Snyder knowing that people are going to watch this at home and knowing it's broken down into chapters. And it's much more him being able to do that because he can. And as I say, you get 8 minutes, one line of dialogue, a lot of it's in slow motion. You get that sort of color tint things that Zack Snyder loves to do, where again it almost feels like you're watching a motion comic because it's like it turns into the page.
Saeed points out that it would not have been a 4-hour movie had he finished it back then.
No way. It might have been. I think he kept threatening to make a 2-part film. He kept saying, "Oh, Justice League, it's going to be a 2-part film," but it's unclear whether this would have just been part 1 or whether this would have been part 1 and 2. There are lots of reasons why it actually could have only been part 1, but yeah. So you get 10 minutes before you get dialogue, and there are things like, and this is much more Zack Snyder than Joss Whedon, which is, it's an hour before we start to see the heroes acting together. We see Zack Snyder goes to great effort to establish each character in their own world for a long time. Each one, you get the Flash who stops the car crash and saves Iris West. You get a much longer Ray Fisher sequence, and I think he would have always have done that. But what I think the difference between Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon is Zack Snyder will tease the team getting together for a good long while before they do, because he wants to establish them as characters individually and their own worlds. So you feel like you could be watching a Flash film in the 10 minutes, an Aquaman film in his 10 minutes, before you get them together to make the Justice League film. Whereas with the Joss Whedon version, Joss Whedon wants to get his characters together as quickly as possible because he wants the rapport. What Joss Whedon cares about is character interaction and banter, and that's two very different styles. And we do get that with the Zack Snyder version. We do get the different character personalities bouncing off each other. But whereas Zack Snyder, that's an element to his story. With Joss Whedon, that's the heart of his story. The Avengers film is built on the fact that we see their character chemistry and then bouncing off their different personalities. Whereas, frankly, when they're just sitting around talking to each other in the Zack Snyder version, it's actually the parts where you're like, oh no, let's get back to the epic, storytelling and characters standing in bleak landscapes, monologuing, so that more paced style absolutely is a key difference. And saying that, and the benefit of that more than for anyone else, is Ray Fisher Cyborg. Man, that character got chopped into pieces in the Joss Whedon version. It's the character Cyborg is practically, he has an arc ish, and things that are in the Zack Snyder version are inferred in the Joss Whedon version. You know, you see there's a small interaction with his dad that indicates their relationship, but frankly, and I absolutely agree with all of the people who say his cat Cyborg in the third act is completely disposable. He's there as just someone who can do fighting, whereas in the Zack Snyder version, you get so much more of a richer, more layered, complex character with an arc and a relationship with his father. You know, you get to meet his mother and how she is killed and how he is injured. And frankly, it's you know, it's so much better. And it's a shame because, you know, you go away from the Justice League film and people said, oh, well, they'll make a Cyborg film, because they said, oh, each one of those characters will get their own films. And yes, we've got a Wonder Woman, and yes, we got a Aquaman, and they keep teasing a Flash film. But Cyborg was the one that people, the commenters I follow, were saying, there is no way in hell you're going to get a standalone Cyborg film. It's going to be the last thing that they do, and if they do it. And I was definitely there. I was like, well, I just don't think the character's got enough going on to have his own standalone film. They'd have to completely revitalize him and think of new ways of telling his story. Whereas this version is like, well, no, I absolutely want to know how this Cyborg exists in our world and what that story would look like and how what he would go on to do. Because, and again, Ray Fisher is a phenomenal performance in this, considering that he gets, what, a quarter of his face for most of the film. You see so much pain and pathos, and, you know, you get this character who just, you really think that is a rich and interesting character. Now to jump back into the drama and the thing of Warner Brothers and Ray Fisher, it's still unlikely we'll get that Cyborg film, because as well as the thing between Ray Fisher and Joss Whedon, Ray Fisher really, you know, he went after Warner Brothers. And the unfortunate thing about that is, regardless of how well this film does, regardless of whether people shout out for a Cyborg film, if we do get one, I would be very surprised if we got one with Ray Fisher, because of the politics of it. And I think that's a shame, because I genuinely now go away going, that is definitely a film I would have wanted to see, is more Cyborg and more of a standalone.
Saeed says Snyder always meant Ray Fisher to be the central character.
It makes perfect sense. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I probably should be, because you probably got picked up on camera. So Saeed has just said Zack Snyder meant for Ray Fisher to be the central character of the film. And in this version, that is more clear than anything. Cyborg is the heart of this. He is the character who goes through the most emotional journey. You know, he's the character who we cling to, who we, as an audience, if you're an audience member who's never seen a film, you know, one of these films before, never seen any of the DC universe stuff, and you just want a character who you go, well, how do I connect to this? Cyborg. You could say maybe the Flash, but I have my own issues with the Flash character in both versions. But the Cyborg character, if you want a character who is learning about himself and about the characters around him in the world, Cyborg is your beating heart, and it's so good. And that's justice to see him really given that story. So like I say, the Flash does get expanded upon a bit, although frankly, some people have said, oh, well, the Flash also gets the treatment where he gets expanded and really his character's opened up. I don't feel so much that. I don't see it in the way that people have said that, oh, he does get the scene with Iris West, and you do get more of his struggle as a person and his issues of identity, and the fact that he wants to fight to free his father when, you know, and sort of the fact that he's displaced from the world and he doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. But I felt like I got that in the Joss Whedon version. I don't feel like the additional things you get from this version add to that character. And yes, he probably has a bit more, he's less of the comic relief, and he has a little bit more pathos like Cyborg, but it's fine. It's that's the one thing that I'm like, yeah, for both versions, same. And I don't know if that's Ezra Miller's fault. It's not his fault, because he plays it like the character, you know, he he best embodies the character. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I've watched the Flash TV series, and I rather like the Grant Gustin interpretation of the character, and it's a lot less manic and tiring than the Ezra Miller one. Whereas I feel like a standalone Ezra Miller film, unless they're going to tone down the character a little bit, I find that quite tiring. But in an ensemble like this, he works perfectly well.
Another comment.
Yeah.
From Mini Loco 18. How does it compare to Batman versus Superman?
Okay, so yeah, that's the Flash. It's fine. So to jump back through the trilogy, my personal experience is I love Man of Steel. I really genuinely think Man of Steel is a great film. I don't think it's the truest version of Superman. And having gone back this week and watched the Superman, the movie, I think that is the Richard Donner Superman film is the truest spirit of Superman. But I love Man of Steel. I genuinely think that Zack Snyder was going for something ambitious. And yes, it's not perfect. But again, sometimes I think what's in Zack Snyder's mind just cannot be represented on film. And so I think it's great. Batman vs. Superman is a difficult one for me because I was definitely in the camp of people who I could see the merits of Batman versus Superman. There were things in it I really like, genuinely really like in Batman versus Superman. The Batman again, Ben Affleck's Batman is phenomenal, and everything connected to him is great. I genuinely think Henry Cavill should be Superman forever, for as long as he is physically able, and I think their chemistry, and even. So the Lex Luthor of it is the problem, which is at the time I really thought, you know what, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor isn't. He's not Gene Hackman, and he's not the comic, and he's not any of the other versions that I've seen. I've seen a multitude of Clancy Brown, Michael Rosenbaum, and he's none of those. But it was a question of, maybe he's doing his own thing. But frankly, it hasn't aged well, and the more time that's passed, the less I've liked it. And I genuinely think things like that. And I think the fact that it feels like a movie that's been cut up and re-put back together, what I think it is, it's like a jigsaw of things I think are great and have potential, and things that are just like, why have you put this in the film? What's going on here? The pacing's weird, and the pieces don't make up the whole, and it's not great. And I've heard that the ultimate version, the ultimate cut, improves upon that, but I haven't seen it. So this version dwarfs that. If you're comparing Batman versus Superman versus Justice League, this is so much better, because I think the problem with the Batman versus Superman film is, in terms of its objective, which is to have Batman fight Superman, it sort of fails because it's trying to be 6 other things. It's trying to be Death of Superman, forming the Justice League, a Lex Luthor storyline, and other things that I remember going, why have you put this arc from the comics in here? This is a lot to process, and so it fails, frankly. Whereas this Justice League film, it feels like what the Justice League should be as a film, and so yeah, it dwarfs Batman versus Superman. I will at some point. I do intend to get Man of Steel, the ultimate version of Batman vs Superman, and the Zack Snyder's Justice League as a maybe a box set. I imagine they'll release that, and I absolutely will get that and watch it and see whether Batman vs Superman is the weak middle, the drop, because it's a shame, because I genuinely went for Batman vs Superman. I genuinely fought for it, saying, if you want everything set up, you'll see what this film's trying to do. But frankly, now as an older person and someone who has spent years looking at film and filmmaking, a film should be should stand on its own feet. And so I think it's So Batman vs Superman, get out of here. Frankly, there are certain plot points that are probably necessary, but of the 3, it's the one that if someone said, "Can I skip one?" that's the one. So yeah, so like I say, there are really interesting things that Zack Snyder does. As I say, this is a 4-hour film. And like I said, the first hour, we don't even get the Justice League. We don't even, they are individuals doing their own thing. And there are some strange things that Zack Snyder does that some people have liked, and I've kind of gone, oh, that's interesting. Like, but other things where it's like, well, was this a necessary change? For instance, when he goes to find Aquaman in the Joss Whedon version, there's a thing where he offers money and then offers more money. Whereas in this version, so it's something like, oh, I'll give you 25,000 if you tell me where I can find Arthur Curry, 30,000 if you bring me to him. In this version, he just goes, here's 25,000, and it's like, well, that's like, it's unnecessary a change. I mean, I suppose it's just a different take, but it's weird things like that. And when you get to the resurrection of Superman, that's the point where there are some strange changes where you kind of go, okay, I see why you did this, but I don't fully see what the necessity. I don't think Zack Snyder was watching the Joss Whedon version going, okay, I'm going to zig where he zagged. But there are moments where you go, the original cut was perfectly fine with this sequence. I don't really fully understand why you'd change it. But yeah, so the first hour is the setup. The second hour is the formation. So it's not until the third hour that you even get the resurrection of Superman, which is bonkers. It is bonkers that you have a 4-hour film and Superman is not in it for 2 of those hours. But when he comes, it's that thing. Like I said, I really hope, because I know J.J. Abrams is making this new Superman film, and I imagine he'll want to completely just start afresh. But man, Henry Cavill is Superman, and I've said that about many actors who play. What's his name? The original Superman motion picture. My brain has gone. Christopher Reeves. Obviously, people said Christopher Reeves is Superman. I think the version who's now on the Lois and Clark show, and obviously has been in Supergirl before, said, oh, he is Superman. So some people have said Brendan Ralph is Superman. And it's probably a generational thing, but Henry Cavill is such a Superman in such a way that I genuinely want to see him come back and do more. And I will be disappointed if this is the end of his character, because it's a shame, because I genuinely think there's a lot going on with him, and he gives such a great version of that character. I don't really want to jump onto next. I suppose now is the good time to actually kind of okay, so I suppose the climax would be the next thing, which is the climax is just
Mini Lopo 18 asks, I know Henry Cavill had a mustache removed in post in the theatrical release. Did they fix that for the Snyder Cut?
Absolutely. There is no babyface. There is no babyface Henry Cavill. The reason that the babyface Henry Cavill in the Joss Whedon cut is because Joss Whedon did a bunch of reshoots, at which point Henry Cavill was contracted for something else where he needed a mustache. But Snyder, of course, went back and just took all the stuff that he'd originally filmed. So there is no baby-faced Superman. There's no weird opening scene, which, there's that weird thing in the Joss Whedon version where it opens with the kids filming him and talking to him. And I get Joss Whedon's thing, which is Joss Whedon likes human stakes. Joss Whedon wants to have human stories, so you have the kids talking to him, so that can symbolize the importance to normal people. And you have that stuff with the Russian family. And I get what he's trying to do there, which is he wants to feel like normal people are being affected by these events. Whereas Snyder wants to talk about gods and monsters. And frankly, I think there is a human element to it. If you look at the story between Cyborg and his father, I think the father is the human element to it. You see the father, and the risk and their relationship. And I think that's the kind of human element that I wanted. I didn't need arbitrary and miscellaneous characters who are just brought in to get that sense of, oh, normal people are at risk.
Saeed asserts that Zack Snyder never watched Joss Whedon's version before completing his film.
So Saeed has said that Zack Snyder has never watched Joss Whedon's version, which I would believe, because why would he? It would be, I think, as a filmmaker, I think it's unhealthy. I think it's, I'm surprised he never came across it or never looked at it, at the time. But I can also see why he would not. And again, it only would muddy the water to look at someone else's version of your film, and I think it's probably mentally unhealthy to do that as well. So yeah, and so they're just very different beasts, and that's probably as much of a kicking as I'm willing to give Joss Whedon, because it's not, as I've said at the beginning of this video, Joss Whedon's personal life and his the stuff that's behind the scenes set aside. I set it aside earlier. As a filmmaker, he was trying to do something. It just doesn't. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for him. And particularly, so the big thing to talk about, I suppose, is the climax, which is, whereas you could watch 2/3 of this film, and a lot of things are expanded upon, and a lot of things are recontextualized. But man, that third act is completely different. Oh, before that, Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is completely redesigned. It looks better. I think the weird crap version of Steppenwolf that we got in the Joss Whedon version is one of the many reasons why that version is now going to be maligned, because it's just he's a badly written villain who looks rubbish. Whereas in this version, one, we actually get a stake for him. We understand exactly what Steppenwolf's arc is. We have a greater understanding of the mother boxes and his relationship to Darkseid, and he just looks so much better and so much more threatening. So that when he's fighting the characters, you feel that there's this opening sequence with the Amazonians and his attack, and he, in this version, feels dangerous, and you genuinely think he might kill so many characters who you know from Wonder Woman, because it's just, he genuinely is this unstoppable force.
Mini Lopo asks, is Darkseid the main antagonist, or is it still Steppenwolf?
So
those spoilers.
Mini Lopo says, is Darkseid the main antagonist, or he wants no spoilers?
No, he wants those spoilers.
Okay, Darkseid is not the main antagonist. Darkseid is more like the looming presence. So we do get Darkseid fairly, not early on, we get him, he sort of pops up halfway through, and then he comes back at the end. Steppenwolf is still the primary physical threat, but because Darkseid's there, and you get more of a sense of the ominous, that Zack Snyder knows well enough that comic book readers, I didn't know who the heck Steppenwolf was before his name was mentioned as the villain back, before Justice League film came out, and I was like, well, why don't you just make Darkseid the villain? In this version, you understand, which is Darkseid is this impossible force. Darkseid is sort of the Galactus, where if Darkseid's there, everything has gone to shit. And Steppenwolf is essentially the threat where, okay, we can fight him, he's just incredibly difficult to defeat. And so you get Darkseid, you get that sense of, oh, Darkseid is coming. And it really, and again, this comes to the problem we might have towards the end with Darkseid. But that final act, that final section with the fight with Steppenwolf, completely different. There are things I miss. So there is an arc you get with the Flash, where Batman says to the Flash, in the Joss Whedon version, there's this whole thing about the Flash has never been a superhero in the traditional sense. He's never fought evil. And the arc is Batman teaching him, all you have to do is save people. Save one person, and then save another. And then, as a rule, he realizes, oh, I can save one, and then another. And so in the climax, it becomes him saving a family. And that's what he does. And he goes to save a family. And if there's anything you would merit Joss Whedon with, it's the fact that you genuinely do care that he's gone to this effort to learn. He doesn't know how to fight demons and go to battle, but he saves a family. And then, of course, it's undermined by Superman coming along and saving an entire block of people. But that's also a great visual joke and a nice indicator of Superman's ability. And I do miss that. That was a cool shot and sequence for the Flash and an arc for the Flash. In this version, it's much more about the power of the Flash and the Speed Force. And again, this is something else that goes deeper into the lore and why I imagine Joss Whedon basically went, don't want to do any of this, because it's about Cyborg having access to all technology and the ability to communicate with any technology that's ever existed, including mother boxes and these being impossibly complicated devices. You have the Flash, dealing with the Speed Force. And so you've got these ridiculously complex arcs with these characters. And it completely changes the face of the... I mean, the narrative is... The climax is completely different. The fight with Steppenwolf is completely different. You have... the reason that they go to fight is so much better in this version, I suppose, because each character has their own super objective. Each character has a reason now that they are going to fight, individually and as a team. And what I am amazed by as well, and this is something that Zack Snyder did really well, is you could easily have just had them get together. Superman has been resurrected. And the Joss Whedon version, the problem I have with possibly Joss Whedon's interpretation of Superman is that Superman is impossibly powerful. And the thing I love is that Superman, when he turns up, he just humiliates anyone he faces. And were we to get a fight with Darkseid, that would be different, but we don't. And it's humiliatingly bad how easily... How much everyone has to fight Steppenwolf, practically, throw everything they have at him. And Superman single-handedly can defeat Steppenwolf fairly easily because that's Superman. But in the Snyder version, you get that sense of, there is a lot more going on here than just defeating Steppenwolf. And once the boxes are activated, it's not just the fact it's going to terraform and destroy the world. It's the fact that Darkseid is going to come and everything is going to go to just this is it. This is Endgame. And then the characters fail. And that is phenomenal. That is something I did not anticipate, which is there is a moment when we're at the climax fight and they're doing the thing where it's like, I need you to do this and I need you to do that and we need to be working as a team. And they fail. They fail to sort of come together in a way that works. And for a moment, you're like, oh my God, is Zack Snyder actually going to do something radical? Because again, he had complete control and he could have just ended this in some kind of post-apocalypse and they've gone, well, if you let me make a new Justice League film, it's going to be a post-apocalyptic Justice League film or something. Now, it doesn't go that way. You actually do get the characters doing something different and a different way that they come together.
Okay, we've got another comment from Mini Lopo. He says he can't remember if the Whedon version came out before, after, or during Infinity War Endgame. But he says, do you think Snyder got influenced by the Avengers movie, Thanos arc, or a Steppenwolf Snyder's creature?
So Mini Lopo has said, just to repeat in case you can't hear on here, was Zack Snyder influenced by Infinity War and Endgame? Did the version come out before? Now, yes, his version did come out before, as in it was all shot and Joss Whedon released it in 2017. And then we got Endgame and Infinity War in... Oh, actually, saying that, I suppose Infinity War must have come out, but they would have been shot simultaneously. Oh, no. Infinity War came out in 2018, Endgame in 2019, if I've remembered that right. Yeah, I'm fairly confident, yes. And so I think, again, it's possible that Zack Snyder realized the vision and that actually you can tell an Infinity War and Endgame scale story. But I'm going to sort of hedge my bets and say, no, Snyder knew this is where he wanted to go. It's too... He would have already have shot it before the release of Infinity War, and it's too ambitious to say that he would have gone, okay, I'm going to sort of make this much more an Endgame Infinity War kind of story. So I'm going to say I'm going to err towards that side of things. Now, there is something else I wanted to say, which is about the Superman of it again. So to return to the Superman, which is one of my favorite sequences, is this time the resurrection of Superman is completely different. Or it's not completely different. This is a case where, yes, Zack Snyder did it differently, although the culminations kind of comes to the same thing, but I think Zack Snyder might have done it so much better, which is they resurrect Superman and he just starts kicking their asses. And again, we had baby mouth Superman and him holding Batman up, and it's just not that. What we got in this version is so much better because we get a Superman who doesn't have any memory and is just fighting them. And again, it shows how humiliatingly powerful Superman is because we get to see each member of the Justice League fighting Superman, some of them all at once, and how easy he defeats them. Not easy, but like how powerful he is compared to them. You know, even Wonder Woman, who tries to go blow for blow with him and probably does the best, can't stand against Superman. And when he sees Batman, it triggers something in him to the point where he is walking toward, and the sequence where he is walking towards Batman and each member of the team tries to stop him and he just throws them around. You know, he takes Wonder Woman and just cracks her into the ground. You know, and that's the one thing that they did keep from the Snyder from the Whedon version, which is we get that wonderful sequence of the Flash running and Superman and at super speed. And as he's holding, and this time it's Wonder Woman he's holding, not Batman, and he just turns his head. And that sequence alone is just everything we've ever wanted. Me personally, and I'm sure other people would say the same, ever wanted is to see that because it's just amazing. And then you have him throwing everyone around, and he gets to Batman, and he is just ready to kill Batman. And and you're genuinely thinking, again, the sense of threat is there, where he is lasering into Batman, and Batman is almost begging for his life. And that is really scary and and you're thinking, this is phenomenal. This is what we want. And so, yes, Snyder version all the way. And it goes the same way as the Whedon version. So it is what it is. But yes, the climax is different. You get the mythology, you get Darkseid, and yes, we get the defeat of Steppenwolf. So Steppenwolf is defeated, but the way he's defeated is so much more brutal because, again, Whedon tries to sort of PG-13 it. It's implied he might have died, but he gets carried away and into a sky portal, and again, another bloody sky portal. Nope, this version, Aquaman stabs him straight through the heart, and Wonder Woman cuts his head off. Like, it is so brutal. And love it because it's so much more, it's much more Justice League than Avengers to have that level of, I mean, okay, you could argue that Thor cut Thanos' head off in Endgame, so, but it's yes, that's much more a Snyder thing than a Whedon thing. And then you get, so story's over, end of dit, that's it. It's character, you know. And then we look at the timer and it says 30 minutes to go. And we're like, 30 minutes? We've had the climax. What the heck could 30 minutes give us? And this is the controversial bit. Because Snyder just goes that one step beyond. Because he decides that not only is he going to tell this epic story that's grand and mythological, but he is going to set up a grand and mythological epic in a way that if he had originally released the Justice League film, you would go, oh my god, this is going to be this is going to dwarf the Marvel Cinematic Universe potentially, because the scale of this, this will be like getting an end game for every film to some degree. Because so if you've come this far and you've wanted spoilers, this is like super spoilers, because this is things that I just couldn't believe that he's put in. So at your own peril. First things first, Martian Manhunter is in this film. And man, what a payoff is that we finally get the character who has been in Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and now this, turns around, and people have said, we're fairly sure that's Martian Manhunter. And Zack Snyder has said that I was planning for that to be Martian Manhunter. Yep. And there's no bones about it. He's there. He turns up halfway through the film in the disguise of Martha Kent. And then he is he's at the end of the film. He turns up to Batman, and yep, there it is, Martian Manhunter. He is now one of the characters. It does sort of beg the question creates that question of like, well, why didn't he get involved in the narrative in the big climax? Why was he not there to save the world? Why was he going to let it die? Perhaps Snyder has a plan for that. I don't know. And again, it begs that question of why would you set up? This feels like it's set up. Martian Manhunter is now in play. He says, Darkseid is coming, and you'll need me to help you stop Darkseid. That leads to the next thing. Darkseid. So we get that Steppenwolf's head rolls away, and Darkseid looks at it and basically says to Desad, "Oh well, I knew he was going to fail, so I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way, full invasion." So we're going to get a full Darkseid invasion in a future film. Again, is this something Snyder's planning? What's going on? Why do we have Darkseid? What's going on? What is this? Then you have things like they really start setting up Cyborg, and after that, so his father dies partway through the narrative, and he gets to hear his father's last message, and it's very powerful. And it potentially hints towards the idea that he might team up with the Justice League again. He might work with another team, potentially the Teen Titans. Okay, that was a very subtle hint, but that feels like his character is going on a journey for a Cyborg film. The Flash, okay, we knew the Flash film was coming, and again, there's not that much difference. It's just he sets himself up in a crime lab. The Flash is ready to be the Flash.
Another comment. I don't know what this is in response to, but Mini Loco just said, "Woo!"
Epic. Like I said, this film is epic. And again, we know the Flash film's going to do multiverse stuff, and we get that sense of the Speed Force and the fact that he broke a rule, and that's something else that Zack Snyder gets to finally pay off, is the stuff involving time travel and the fact that the Flash is not supposed to go to a certain speed because it breaks the law. If he goes faster than the speed of light, he will break time. And we start to see the effects of that. And consequently, we go, oh, maybe, and we know the Flash film is going to be about the multiverse. And the film constantly references the multiverse. So again, the Flash film setup. But we know that's coming, so we kind of, it's like, well, that sets up something we know. I haven't talked much about Batman because, frankly, yeah, I will. But there's not much to say. Batman is good in the original, and he's the best thing probably in the original Justice League, Joss Whedon, and he's the same level of quality here. But what we get in this epilogue is they essentially they pay off the dream sequences that we got from Batman versus Superman. So finally that gets paid off. And yes, this thing that they've teased for a long time, we get Jared Leto's Joker, of course, from that and Suicide Squad. And I didn't like Jared Leto's Joker. I don't like Suicide Squad. I don't think it's a very good film. I loved the concept of the Suicide Squad, and I think it really was a letdown, and Jared Leto's Joker wasn't very good in it. However, what we get is, again, we return to the Batman visions. And what we realize in this narrative is we get the Jared Leto Joker, we get Mira, played by Amber Heard, and we get Ray Fisher Cyborg, which in some respects, just taking a side note, unfortunately, those are three actors who may never return. Ray Fisher because of his politics with Warner Brothers, Amber Heard because of her personal issues and her firing from Aquaman 2, allegedly, and Jared Leto because Jared Leto is always on the cusp of being cancelled, and who knows? Jared Leto seems to survive it time and time again. Who knows? But these are three actors who are in this sequence who, frankly, you may never see again. But what you realize Batman's dream sequences are, and what possibly is a consequence of the Flash breaking the speed of light law, is that this is a parallel timeline where we have an evil Superman and they are preparing to fight an equal Superman. And then you get an incredible scene with Batman and the Joker facing off. And considering we got a bit of Joker and Suicide Squad, and we've obviously had Batman in Batman vs Superman, the fact that we've never seen them together except for a tiny 5-minute sequence in Suicide Squad, not in 5 minutes, well, 2 minutes, and they don't actually interact. Seeing them face off is just awesome, you know. And I would have loved to have seen that Batman Joker film in a greater Justice League narrative. And I'm looking forward to the Batman, Matt Reeves as Batman. I really am, but I would have loved to see what that would have come of that. But again, parallel timeline, evil Superman, and it feels like it's setting up again something else entirely other than the Darkseid plot and the Cyborg plot and the Flash plot. And it's bonkers. It's bonkers because it's just like, what are you doing, Zach? What is going on here that you are, you know, is this your big announcement that you are essentially coming back with force and that you are taking the reins? Because Aquaman 2 is coming. Wonder Woman 3 is in the air, but it probably will happen. The Flash is happening. We're getting Matt Reeves as Batman, which is its own thing. And we're getting the new Ava DuVernay's New Gods.
Saeed says he loves Affleck's Batman better than Christian Bale version. Oh, and Mini Loco asks about the Green Lantern.
So, Saeed said...
And he was saying woo to Martian Manhunter.
Woo to Martian Manhunter, indeed. So, Saeed was saying that he likes Affleck's version better than Bale's version. I tend to agree, but I think it's unfair because I think yes, this Affleck's version would have worked much better in a Justice League film than the Bale version. But I don't know what the Affleck version would have looked like in his own film, and so I think they're just such different beasts. You know, they'll be as different as what's the actor's name? Cedric Diggory. Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson as Batman will be something entirely different, and they need there's no longer a world in which we compare them. There's a point comparing them. They feel like they're going to be their own things. So I agree, he is much better in this film, but I don't know what he would have looked like in the Nolan. You know, different beasts. And Miniolo said, what did he say?
Miniolo said, ask about the Green Lantern.
Green Lantern. So Green Lantern. So that's something I completely forgot. So that's, again, Zack Snyder's version. He extends everything. That sequence with the armies and the flashback is so much more epic and incredible. It's ridiculous because we get armies of Amazons, armies of Atlanteans, humans, and new gods, and a Green Lantern. And this is an extended sequence of war where we see them fighting Darkseid. And it is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing that you get this sequence. And Joss Whedon's intention was to tighten everything, to really try and contain it. So he makes it a short flashback. Because narratively, yes, maybe it should be a short flashback. But if you're going to go for the mythology, I'm trying to think of a blanket. Do it. Why not?
There's definitely a Green Lantern. There
is definitely a Green Lantern. And it's awesome. And yes, it's that sequence is incredible. If you want just to have if in a few weeks, if you just want to watch something awesome, you'll watch that sequence just by itself. In the same way you'll watch the Superman sequence. You could watch some of these sequences standalone, and they just are everything you could want. So yes, this is, yeah. So I don't know what Zack Snyder's doing. I don't know why he's setting up this insane narrative. I hope there's a plan, and I want to see more. God, I hope there's more because, yes, this is so much better than the 2017 version. This is what you want. I remember the Justice League animated series. I grew up with the Justice League animated series, and outside of the comic, the cartoon, the actual cartoon, I remember the opening sequence where you see that camera panning across them as the trumpets blow, and they look phenomenal, and you just think, that's the feeling I want from this film. Just that sense of triumph, and it's like you're looking at a dynasty of superheroes, and this film is that. And yep. Many things that I liked. More Alfred. That's great. Jeremy Irons is really funny, and I'm so glad to see him do more. He was a great Alfred, so that is good. The Amazonians, like I said, get a great sequence. I don't feel like I've talked too much about Wonder Woman, but again, she is great in this. But she's been great in, she was great in the original version, and I don't think it enhances her in any way. And yeah, I think I've covered everything. I'm sure there are Easter eggs and things that I loved that I've forgotten because there's so much of this film. But to return to my base point, which is go watch this film. I know at the minute it's on Now TV, so I had to get a subscription just to watch this for like a membership. But or if you're US HBO or whatever the case, because man alive, this is the Justice League. God, I hope Zack Snyder is planning something, and that this is part of a bigger grand scheme, because I feel like whatever comes after this, if it's its own separate stuff, it'll be such a come down. And again, DC against Marvel, they're different beasts. I love Endgame and Infinity War. I got the DVDs of Endgame and Infinity War this last Christmas, and I think they fulfilled me in a very different way than this did. And I don't think putting them, side by side is fair. But again, I feel like my childhood has come to life with these films. So,
one more comment from iThanks, just says hi Jordan.
Hi thanks. You have caught me just. So they said hi Jordan. You've caught me just at the end of my stream, or coming to the wrap up point on my stream. If you have any last questions or comments, throw them in now, because I think I've covered everything I want to in this film. Who knows? I feel exhausted. But yeah, this was phenomenal, genuinely phenomenal. I hope it's re-released to cinemas, because I want to see this in a theater as it should be, and I genuinely think that Zack Snyder is a visionary in a way that sometimes he's not been credited for. Yeah, phenomenal film. And I strongly recommend, if you're a comic book fan, and if you're a fan of Zack Snyder, and if you're just a fan of epic stories like this. Oh, one more tiny thing that happened, another thing. So we do get a little bit of Jesse Eisenberg's just Lex Luthor. And earlier I did talk about how I wasn't keen on him in Batman vs. Superman. We do get a slightly more toned down thing, and it's something else they set up. So we get, again, like in Joss Whedon's version, Lex Luthor escapes, and Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, appears on his yacht. Whereas in the original version, it was then that Jesse Eisenberg sort of goes, "Oh, we should set up a league of our own." And frankly, at the time, I was like, "Take it or leave it." It doesn't feel particularly. It's a smaller tease as Thanos' face in the original Avengers, which is very much more Joss Whedon. It's fine. This version, it doesn't do that. Completely gets rid of it. That basically Lex Luthor says to Deathstroke, says to him, "Oh, Batman is Bruce Wayne." Again, it feels like it's setting something up with Deathstroke and Batman. Why? Who knows? Yeah, I think, and also with the Joker and the Batman confrontation, they do outright say that Joker has murdered at least one Robin, which of course pays off Batman versus Superman with the ha-has on the costume in the Batcave. And so it really is paying off all the little things that Snyder was setting up. I have no idea whether all the things he's now set up are going to go anywhere, but who knows? So this is genuinely the end of the stream now. Thank you for joining me. Yes, this has been a long one, but again, I watched a 4-hour film, so I feel like I'm allowed to talk about it for about an hour. So yeah, thank you for joining me. If you want to go through some of my older videos, which are significantly shorter than this, please go back through my channel, subscribe for more videos. I am going to continue to try and do a live stream once a week. They absolutely won't be as long as this, but I will try to make them long enough that it feels justified. So, please come and try and join me. Probably, I'll sort of try and make it more regular, but I'll work that out as the weeks go on when that stream is going up. And again, if you follow me, or if you subscribe, you'll get notifications. And if you press the bell, you'll get notifications of when new videos come up and when the live stream is being shown. And if you can follow me at Jordan_Woodley on Twitter, I'm posting constantly about new videos and when I'm going to be streaming. So, and please share videos, and if you wish, share this this epic stream. It should be uploaded as a video shortly. Thank you again for joining me. I can't believe some of you have been here since the beginning of the video, but from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Saeed says, take care, my brother. Let's enjoy.
Saeed, take care, my brother. Take care, all of you. I'll see you again. Take care.
Or not.
Or not? Cool. Take two. Take care.
Oh, it hasn't.
Oh. Okay.
So what you do now?
Let me look, because I had this last time. Hold on.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, it was just processing. It's a long video. What's it say?
Your stream will stop immediately and you will no longer be live.